In a world obsessed with finding the one, Carl Jung proposed something revolutionary, that staying single might be the most psychologically healthy choice you can make. While society pressures us to believe that happiness comes from romantic partnership, Jung's groundbreaking research into the human psyche reveals a startling truth. Some of the most fulfilled, psychologically integrated people are those who have mastered the art of being alone. Jung didn't advocate for loneliness or isolation. Instead, he championed what he called individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself, independent of external validation or completion through others. He observed that many people rush into relationships not out of love, but out of fear of facing themselves. They use romantic partnerships as distractions from the profound inner work that true psychological health requires. According to Jung, when you stay single by choice, you embark on the most important relationship of your life, the relationship with your own unconscious mind. This isn't about becoming selfish or antisocial. It's about developing such a complete understanding of yourself that when you do choose to connect with others, you do so from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. Before we dive deeper into Jung's revolutionary insights about the power of solitude, if you're ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about relationships and personal fulfillment, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We're exploring the most profound psychological truths that can transform how you see yourself and your path to genuine happiness. Jung believed that modern society has created what he called a participation mystique, an unconscious merging with others that prevents us from developing our authentic selves. When we're constantly in relationships, we often lose touch with our own desires, dreams, and inner voice. We become so focused on pleasing others, maintaining harmony, and avoiding conflict that we forget who we really are beneath all the roles we play. The single life, when approached consciously, becomes what Jung termed a container for transformation. Without the distractions of romantic drama, relationship maintenance, and the constant negotiation that partnerships require, you have the mental and emotional space to explore the depths of your own psyche. You can ask the difficult questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I truly want from life? What patterns keep repeating in my relationships, and how can I heal them? This isn't about avoiding love or connection forever. It's about becoming so psychologically complete that your future relationships come from choice rather than compulsion, from love rather than fear, from abundance rather than scarcity. Jung's concept of the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine aspects within every person, reveals why staying single can be transformative. Most people project these inner archetypal energies onto romantic partners, expecting them to fulfill roles that only we can fill for ourselves. When you stay single, you're forced to develop both your feminine and masculine qualities internally, creating what Jung called psychological androgyny, a balanced, complete human being. For women, this means no longer waiting for a man to provide security, direction, or validation. Instead, you develop your inner masculine, your ability to take action, make decisions, and create the life you want. You stop looking for someone to complete you because you realize that completion comes from integrating all aspects of yourself. The strong, decisive part of you that society might have taught you to suppress in relationships can finally emerge and flourish. Jung observed that many women lose themselves in relationships because they've never learned to access their own inner masculine energy. They become dependent on their partners for everything from financial security to life direction. But when you stay single, you're compelled to develop these capabilities yourself. You learn to trust your own judgment, make your own money, and create your own adventure. This process isn't always comfortable. Jung warned that individuation requires what he called holding the tension of opposites. When you're single, you must learn to be both nurturing and assertive, both receptive and decisive, both independent and connected to community. You can't rely on a partner to carry one side of these equations while you remain underdeveloped in the other. The single life also forces you to confront what Jung termed your shadow, those aspects of yourself that you've rejected or hidden. In relationships, we often project our shadow onto our partners, blaming them for qualities we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. When you're alone, there's nowhere to hide from your own jealousy, neediness, anger, or fear. This confrontation with your shadow is initially painful, but ultimately liberating. Jung believed that shadow integration is essential for psychological health. When you stay single and do this inner work, you become less likely to attract partners who embody your unhealed wounds. You stop unconsciously seeking relationships that replay your childhood traumas or confirm your limiting beliefs about yourself. Instead, you develop the capacity for what Jung called conscious relationship, partnership based on mutual growth rather than mutual projection. The result is a profound sense of self-possession that Jung considered the foundation of all authentic happiness. You discover that you are enough, complete, and worthy of love exactly as you are, without needing external validation to confirm your worth. One of Jung's most revolutionary insights was his understanding of what he called the inferior function, that aspect of our personality that remains underdeveloped because we've learned to rely on our strengths while avoiding our weaknesses. Staying single creates the perfect laboratory for developing this inferior function, leading to psychological wholeness that's impossible to achieve when you're constantly accommodating another person's needs and expectations. If you're naturally introverted, single life might force you to develop social skills and learn to enjoy your own company without becoming isolated. If you're extroverted, solitude teaches you to find fulfillment in inner reflection rather than constant external stimulation. Jung believed that this development of our inferior function is crucial for what he called the second half of life, the period when we shift from external achievement to inner meaning. The single life also allows you to explore what Jung termed active imagination, a practice of engaging consciously with your unconscious mind through dreams, fantasies, and creative expression. When you're not spending your emotional energy managing relationship dynamics, you have the mental space to pay attention to your inner world. You start noticing patterns in your dreams, following creative impulses, and developing what Jung considered essential for psychological health, a relationship with your own unconscious. Many people fear that staying single means missing out on growth opportunities that only relationships can provide. But Jung argued the opposite, that premature or unconscious coupling actually stunts psychological development. When you're constantly focused on another person's needs, moods, and reactions, you never develop the capacity for deep self-reflection. You become psychologically dependent, using your partner as a mirror for your self-worth, rather than developing internal validation. Jung observed that people who stay single often develop what he called cultural participation, a deep connection to art, literature, spirituality, or social causes that provides meaning beyond personal relationships. They become what he termed cultural carriers, individuals who contribute to collective human consciousness through their personal development and creative expression. This doesn't mean single people are selfish or disconnected from others. Instead, they often form deeper, more authentic friendships because they're not using these relationships to fill romantic voids. They can love their friends, family, and community members without the desperation or neediness that comes from unfulfilled romantic longing. Their connections are based on genuine appreciation rather than emotional dependency. Jung also noted that many of history's most influential thinkers, artists, and spiritual leaders were either single or found their greatest insights during periods of solitude. The single life provides what he called creative solitude, the psychological space necessary for innovation, deep thinking, and spiritual development that benefits not just the individual, but society as a whole. Perhaps Jung's most profound insight about staying single relates to what he called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that emerges when we learn to hold tension without immediately resolving it through external means. In relationships, we often use our partners to resolve internal conflicts or avoid difficult emotions. When you're single, you're forced to develop this transcendent function, learning to sit with discomfort until new solutions emerge from within. This process begins with what Jung termed active suffering, not the passive victimization that keeps us stuck, but the conscious choice to experience difficult emotions without immediately seeking escape through romantic distraction. When loneliness arises, instead of frantically seeking dates or settling for incompatible partners, you learn to explore what the loneliness is actually telling you. Often, it's not about needing another person. It's about needing a deeper connection with yourself. Jung observed that many people use romantic relationships as what he called psychological containers, external structures that help them feel stable and secure. But when you stay single, you must develop your own internal container. This means learning to self-soothe when anxious, self-motivate when depressed, and self-validate when insecure. These aren't just coping skills. They're the foundation of psychological maturity. The development of your internal container also transforms your relationship with what Jung called the collective, society's expectations and pressures. When you're single, you face constant questioning from family, friends, and society about when you'll settle down. Learning to withstand this pressure without defensive reactions or desperate compliance builds what Jung considered essential psychological strength, the ability to live according to your own inner guidance rather than external expectations. This resistance to collective pressure often reveals what Jung termed your personal myth, the unique story and purpose that gives your life meaning beyond conventional markers of success. Many people never discover their personal myth because they're too busy following society's prescribed path of education, career, marriage, and family. Staying single creates space to ask deeper questions. What am I here to contribute? What unique gifts do I have to offer the world? What would I do with my life if I knew I couldn't fail? Jung believed that discovering and living your personal myth is more important for psychological health than following conventional relationship timelines. He observed that people who live according to their authentic purpose, whether single or partnered, experience what he called eudaimonia, a deep satisfaction that comes from being fully yourself rather than conforming to external expectations. The single life also develops what Jung called psychological sovereignty, the ability to make decisions based on your own values rather than fear of judgment or abandonment. This sovereignty doesn't make you selfish. It makes you more capable of genuine love when you do choose to share your life with someone. Jung's research into what he called the stages of life reveals why staying single during certain periods is not just beneficial, but essential for psychological development. He identified that people go through distinct phases of growth, and rushing into relationships during transitional periods often prevents the deep inner work that each stage requires. The single life allows you to fully complete each developmental phase before moving to the next. In your 20s and 30s, Jung believed the primary task is individuation, separating from family influences and discovering your authentic self. Many people skip this crucial phase by immediately transferring their dependency from parents to romantic partners. They never learn who they are independent of relationships, which creates what Jung called pseudo-maturity, appearing adult on the surface while remaining psychologically dependent underneath. When you stay single during these formative years, you're forced to confront what Jung termed the provisional life, the tendency to live as if your real life will begin when certain external conditions are met, like finding the perfect partner. Single life teaches you that your real life is happening now, and happiness comes from fully engaging with your present circumstances, rather than waiting for someone else to complete your story. Jung also observed that staying single allows you to develop what he called creative eros, the ability to channel your romantic and sexual energy into artistic, intellectual, or spiritual pursuits. Instead of directing all your passionate energy toward one person, you can spread it across multiple areas of growth and contribution. This doesn't mean repressing your sexuality. It means expanding your understanding of what passionate energy can create. Many of Jung's most successful patients were single women who had initially come to therapy feeling broken or incomplete because they hadn't found lasting love. Through analysis, they discovered that their singleness wasn't a problem to be solved, but a gift to be embraced. They learned to see themselves as complete beings whose worth wasn't dependent on external validation through romantic partnership. If you're resonating with these insights about the transformative power of conscious singleness, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Understanding Jung's perspective on relationships and personal development can completely revolutionize how you see your own journey toward wholeness and authentic happiness. Jung noticed that people who embrace their single status often develop what he called the sage archetype, becoming sources of wisdom and guidance for others, precisely because they've done the deep inner work that relationship-focused people often avoid. They become what he termed individuated beings, who can offer genuine love and support to others without neediness or agenda. The key insight is that staying single isn't about rejecting love. It's about becoming so complete within yourself that any future relationship becomes an enhancement rather than a necessity, a choice rather than a compulsion. Jung's ultimate vision for staying single centers on what he called the realization of the self, the process of becoming a fully integrated human being who embodies both individual uniqueness and universal wisdom. This self-realization, Jung argued, is the highest goal of human existence, and for many people, it can only be achieved through periods of conscious solitude and single living. When you embrace staying single as a path to self-realization, you begin to understand what Jung meant by the union of opposites within oneself. Instead of seeking completion through another person, you learn to unite your own contradictions, your strength and vulnerability, your independence and need for connection, your rational mind and intuitive wisdom. This internal marriage creates what Jung called the divine androgyne, a psychologically complete being who doesn't need external validation to feel whole. This doesn't mean you become isolated or antisocial. Instead, Jung observed that truly individuated single people often have the richest, most meaningful connections with others because they're not using relationships to fill internal voids. They can love freely without attachment, support others without codependency, and contribute to their communities without seeking recognition or approval. Jung also recognized that staying single allows you to develop what he termed a personal relationship with the transcendent, whether through spirituality, art, nature, or service to humanity. When you're not pouring all your devotional energy into romantic worship, you can direct it toward higher purposes that connect you to something larger than individual concerns. This spiritual dimension of single life often provides more lasting fulfillment than romantic partnerships. The practical benefits of Jung's approach to conscious singleness extend far beyond personal growth. Single people often become what he called cultural bridges, connecting different communities, ideas, and perspectives because they're not limited by the insularity that couple relationships can create. They travel more freely, take greater risks, and often make contributions to society that partnered people, focused on family responsibilities, cannot make. Perhaps most importantly, Jung believed that people who have mastered the art of being single make the best partners when they do choose to commit to someone. They enter relationships from abundance rather than scarcity, love rather than need, and choice rather than fear. They don't lose themselves in partnership. because they've spent time developing a strong sense of self to bring to the relationship. Jung's message isn't that everyone should stay single forever, but that periods of conscious singleness are essential for psychological health and spiritual development. In a culture that equates relationship status with personal worth, choosing to stay single becomes a radical act of self-love and psychological courage. The single life, when lived consciously and purposefully, isn't a consolation prize or a temporary state while waiting for real life to begin. It's a complete, fulfilling path that can lead to the highest levels of psychological integration and spiritual realization that Jung believed were the ultimate goals of human existence.